Welcome, everybody. This is Laura Georgiana, Director of the Park Fellows Program currently, and thrilled to be joining you here for our first pilot session of our alumni virtual leadership development workshop. This was an idea that came up through some conversations with a couple of alumni when I was doing some traveling last year. And the idea was that we have some pretty amazing alumni who are thought leaders and or have expertise or functional excellence in all sorts of different things relative to leadership, and or just of, sort of a personal interest in pieces of leadership where they've done a lot of exploration and work. And wouldn't it be great if we had a way to connect with each other and hear from the alumni that are a part of our community, and in the process, all continue to stretch ourselves and continue to grow as leaders. And so with that in mind, I did a little bit of brainstorming and scoping out how we might be able to do this, and came up with these virtual workshops. And Angie, who I'll introduce in more detail in a minute, was nice enough to offer to be our first alumna to lead such a session. So as we get started, just a couple of sort of logistical points. Emily Hampton, who I think that many of you have interacted with probably via email, who is a part of our team here at Cornell, is on the session and is happy to answer if you're having any trouble hearing or anything goes on technically. Please feel free to just pop into the chat box and do a chat specifically to Emily Hampton, and she will work with you to try to figure out what may be going on. So she should hopefully be able to sort of figure it out, or we'll work through it. But in any case, most importantly, I want to switch us to a great introduction of a great person who is one of actually my dear friends as well as a Park Fellow alumni community member. Angie Fresch was Park Fellow 03, the same year as I was, and is somebody who spent many years in sales and marketing, some time in HR, and about 4 years ago made a transition into doing career coaching and really helping individuals who are feeling maybe stuck in their current careers to either find more fulfillment in their existing careers and or explore what might be other career options that would be more fulfilling for them. And so as I was thinking about the Park program and the time that we spend in the program when you're here as students, really trying to explore where is it that I want to have impact in the world. And then many of our alumni telling me, boy, it would be really nice to revisit some of those questions because it's been a while since I've thought about them. I thought she would be a great person to kick us off with this workshop series. And so with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Angie, thank her again for taking the time to lead us through this workshop, and let her take it away from here. So, Ange, thanks so much again for being able to join us for this session.
It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be here with all of you. So thank you, Laura. And thank you, Emily. I wanted to just take a moment here at the beginning to acknowledge both of you, Laura and Emily, for the work that you're doing to engage the Park Fellow alumni and to provide these kind of opportunities. I think it's really fantastic. And really acknowledgement to all of you who are on the call. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time out of your Sunday evening or afternoon, depending where you are, and yeah, just investing in yourself. And so just really glad you're here. And I just want to say a quick hello. So welcome to Brian and Donnie and Hannah. I won't read everybody out. To Ryan, and there's another Ryan, and Taylor. It's so great you're here. And I just wanted to take a moment and say I am intentionally leaving the presentation in preview mode. You will see the slides appearing down the sort of left-hand side of your screen. That's because I may jump around in the presentation and tailor this workshop to you depending on what questions come up. And we'll also be using the slides as a little bit of an interactive whiteboard in a little bit, and one of the exercises we're going to do together. So let's just jump right in. And I would say if you resonate with what's on the screen right now, that your work that you do in the context of your broader life is just too important to compromise on, then you're definitely in the right place. You'll see on some of my slides at the bottom the logo for Career Shifters. I am an associate coach working in connection with a few different organizations, and one of them is Career Shifters, and some of the content I'm using tonight, I've worked in development with them. So I wanted to give credit to Career Shifters where credit is due. So what we're going to do is, I'll tell a little, in terms of the aim of this workshop, it's really designed to give you an increased awareness of the importance of your own fulfillment within your career in the context of your whole life. It's designed to help you to better understand what's really important to you and what impacts your fulfillment. It's designed to help you really get clear on the criteria, or if you are already clear, get even clearer on the criteria that you never want to lose out on if you sort of make a career change. That everyone will have their unique list of what's really important to them and what would be present for work that's fulfilling in the context of a fulfilling life. And what I would want for each of you today is to come away from this workshop with at least one practical action that you can take coming out of our time together that will lead you toward being even more fulfilled in your work in the context of your life. Finally, one of the aims of this workshop is to provide us all an opportunity to connect with each other. So we will be using some breakout rooms and interacting across the workshop. So get ready to have some fun as we go through this together. I have to say at this point, it's not a miracle workshop. I wish I could say it were, but if you're really feeling like, oh, I have a long way to go to kind of reach fulfillment, then it's probably going to be a great starting point. And don't worry, there's always additional steps you can take after this workshop as well that I'd be happy to share with you if you want to explore this further. So let's just say a few words about kind of the structure we're going to follow. We have about the next now 80 minutes together. I'll say a few words about how to get the most out of this workshop, and then I'll go around and I'll hear from a few of you what's brought you here this evening and why you're on the call. We'll then do an exercise together. And then cover off just a little bit of theory of what I like to call the fulfillment sweet spot. We'll then step into another exercise, and then finally I'll come around and, depending, I think, on the number of people on the call, we might almost hear from everybody, or at least most of you, on what is one practical next step you'll be taking based on what you've learned on the workshop tonight. So in terms of how to get the most out of this workshop, I'd say first and foremost, just be present. So get really comfortable. If you can, close the door to the room you're in, turn your phones on silent, like just do everything you can to really be here and present. Also do grab a pen and paper, because some of those exercises that I mentioned, we will be working through together and you'll need something to write with. So if you don't have a pen and paper right now, I encourage you to go ahead and get up and go get one. I'd encourage you also not only to use the pen and paper for the exercises, but also to make notes of things you want to take away from the workshop. My slides have very little content on them and we won't be sharing them afterwards. So your notes are yours to take away, for what you've learned on the workshop that you want to maybe go back and refer to after this. We'll be covering a lot of things fairly quickly. So yeah, just get ready to start scribbling when things are, some of the stuff is what you want to catch. Another thing I would say is around confidentiality. So I take confidentiality very seriously, and I will not be sharing anything that gets discussed on this workshop with anybody else. And what I ask of each of you is to sign up to confidentiality as well. I want this to be a really safe space for us to explore together. And no matter where somebody is, I want you to be able to share openly and authentically about where you're at. So please give me a nod, thumbs up, whatever that might be, to say, yes, I'm happy for you, of course, to talk with, a friend, a partner, a colleague tomorrow about what you've learned, but please just do not share anything, that somebody else shares on the workshop, or certainly anything, about somebody on the workshop that makes them personally identifiable. Okay, sound good? Okay, thank you for that. And finally, my encouragement to you to use the chat box. And so I see somebody's already sort of started the chat box there. So let me pull up and see what's happening in there. But using the chat box is our way to communicate. Got a couple good thumbs up for the confidentiality. Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Taylor and Karen as well. So my encouragement to you around the chat box this evening is this, since we can't all be speaking at the same time. When you hear something that either I say or that somebody else says that resonates with you, pop that into the chat box. Say, oh, I felt that way too. Or when you hear something that has been maybe different to your experience, pop that in the chat box as well. If you have a question for me or anyone else in the group, put that in the chat box. Or you may have a suggestion for somebody else based on what they're sharing or based on something that you see them say in the chat box. Go ahead and put that into the chat box as well. It's a great way to connect with each other as well. So if there's somebody on the workshop today that you think, I would love to connect with them after this, we strongly encourage you to do that. And you can see, if you look in the chat box, if you click on chat and it pulls up the chat box, right, the first default will say to everyone. In the blue oval, you'll see everyone. And then there's a downward facing arrow. If you click on that, you can see that you can send a direct private message to anyone else in the group as well. So please connect in that way, just as if we were in the same room together and you might end up trading phone numbers or email addresses. I encourage you to do that today as well. So let's get into the group with this actually. So please, would you share with me, where are you joining us from? I bet we'll have people from all over, and maybe put in there which graduating year from Johnson School are you? So please share that in the chat box. I'll get started here. I'm Angie. I'm in Chicago, and I'm 03. Great, thank you. Thank you. Welcome, Karen, joining from Connecticut, and Taylor. They're in Ithaca, and Kyle. Welcome, guys. Thank you, Josh, out there in Salt Lake City. Glad you're here. Hannah, great. Glad you're there from Cincinnati. Nice to see you. And Victoria, welcome, and Brian and Kenny and Ryan as well. Ryan and Ann, both they're in Portland, fantastic. Okay, and Donnie, welcome. Okay, guys, thank you for helping get in the groove. And like I say, I really do encourage you to use the chat box. It can help us, track how things that are happening on the workshop are landing with you. And it's just a great way to keep this interactive. So thanks for that. So with that, let me come to just a few of you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen actually so we can see each other better. And so if you do have a video that you can turn on, please do so. If you can't, that's okay. I would also invite you, if you're not familiar with Zoom, on the top right-hand part of your screen, you can see there's a gallery view and a speaker view. So if I'm really big right now because I'm talking, you probably have it on speaker view. But if you want to switch and see everybody more at once, which is what I like to do personally, but it's whatever you prefer, you can switch to gallery view as well. So just know that you have the option for how that works. So with that, I would love to come to just a few of you and hear a couple of things. So one is, how fulfilled are you right now with your work and the context of your whole life on a scale of 1 to 10? And 10 would be like, yep, I'm killing it. Everything feels really good. I can't see much more I could be doing to be more fulfilled. And of course, 1 would be, I think I have a ways to go, and that's fine too. And if you could answer that, and also then share, what do you think your biggest obstacle is? If there's room for more fulfillment, what do you think your biggest obstacle is to being more fulfilled? That'd be really fascinating as well. So to give you an example, I would say right now, my fulfillment score would be about a 7. And the reason behind that is that we have recently moved to Chicago from the UK. And I do most of my work at the minute remotely. And while I love leading workshops like this via Zoom, I'm really missing some of the in-person live one-on-one sort of interaction that I had with some of the other work I was doing in the UK. So, and my obstacle right now to kind of building that back into my career is simply time, and I guess prioritizing and making that happen. So if you could answer in sort of that way, that would be great. So I'm just going to pick a few people. If you don't mind, I'm going to come to you first. Ryan, welcome. I'm going to try to take you off mute, or you may need to click. There you go. Hi, Ryan. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
I hear you just fine. Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Okay.
So the scale was 1 to 10?
Yeah, so 1 to 10. Where would you put yourself in terms of fulfillment right now?
That's a darn good question, and I think it depends on the time of day you catch me at. It's Sunday. I had a great hike today, and it's been a great weekend. So yeah, maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But you catch me on a Tuesday, Thursday. Sorry, Donnie, but I'm in class a lot that day, and probably a little lower. I'd say that I've achieved a little bit of clarity in my life. Just last night, I committed to returning to Honeywell Aerospace, which is where I interned for the summer. So, I mean, that's definitely brought mental peace, having that clarity post-graduation. And I'm really excited about that opportunity. So, yeah, I'd say doing pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, Ryan, thank you for sharing. And what would you say? So I heard you saying 7 or 8, but sometimes I'd love for you, since you're sort of now in a place where you can imagine where you're going post graduation. And I know it's a little bit, dreaming and conjecture, but imagine you are now at Honeywell Aerospace. What would you imagine a potential obstacle to being like a 9 or a 10 in terms of fulfillment?
Just the industry. I don't have industry background, and it was a steep learning curve for the summer. I dug into it. I'm still a little surprised they hired me. I worked hard, and I think they saw that. But there's a lot more hard work and initiative that I'm going to have to take to really fill in that solid foundation for operating in the aerospace industry. And I perceive that to probably be a big frustration for the first year or two. But there's a lot of opportunities there. And I was working on a pretty novel project, and that was really inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a piece around the learning curve, and then, you'll be having a lot to sort of get to grips with as you start. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing.
I can add more context if you'd like.
I think I would love to, if we had more time together, and I'm going to just say we'll pause it there only because we'll have other things to get on the workshop. But first of all, congratulations. That's awesome. You've got clarity about what you're going to be doing. And so for any of you, if you can relate to some of the pieces Ryan was saying, please let us know that in the chat box as well. And thank you again, Ryan, for sharing. I think I will come down just to see, I think there's somebody calling in, and the phone number ends in 469. So I've unmuted you. Hello, who is this on the phone?
Hi, yeah, sorry for joining late. This is Joe Amonte.
Sorry, was it Joe? Joe,
yes.
Joe, okay, Joe, welcome. And so for you, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate your fulfillment with your work in the context of your life?
Probably 7 or 8.
Okay.
Maybe 7. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what is it behind the 7? Like what crops up in your mind as you give yourself a 7?
I guess I would say a few things. One is, I guess I have a few criteria when I consider the different things that I do. One is pretty sort of straightforward, is, do I enjoy going to work every morning, and do I like what I do? So I would say I do that. I very much like what I do. I would say that I've had a lot of various opportunities. And so whether it be from working on strategy to working on more tactical operations, so I think that's good to have a variation. I would say some of the things that I'm a little bit worried about is I've done several different things in my career. So I'm not necessarily an expert in any one. Which is fine. I think it's fine when you stay in any one company.
Yeah.
But when you start to consider, okay, if I wanted to go outside the company, or companies change, one thing I've seen as you move up in the company, right? If leadership changes and you're not in favor, or there's lots of reasons. I don't think I'm at risk, but I've seen others where they're out and then they have to find something. So that's something that I think about. But overall, I think, I'm in a good spot. I find that the other criteria I use is, am I delivering more value than I think I'm getting paid? Because that makes me feel satisfied that I'm also doing a good job, and I also feel good about that. So I have a boss that I can learn a lot from. So there's a few things.
Yeah. So Joe, that's great. It sounds like tons of positive things. And you have a high level of awareness and clarity about what is going on for you right now. And there's that one piece that you said, it kind of weighs on me around, what what is the sort of balance for me around either being a deep expert in something versus having a wide variety of experiences. So it sounds like there's some resonance with that as well from Kenny. So,
right.
So Joe, thank you. Thank you for being very brave and sharing. I do appreciate it. And so if any of you else, any of the rest of you would like to share, please pop it into the chat box. You know, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of your fulfillment, and what's driving it? Like, what's behind that for you right now? But what we will do, and I'm going to pop you back on mute, Joe. Thank you again for sharing. And what I'd love to do right now is go ahead and step into the first exercise that I promised we would be covering. And actually, what I will ask you to do is take out your pen and paper, because we'll be doing some writing. And I'm actually going to ask for a volunteer that I'll go through this exercise with live on the call while each of you are doing this for yourselves on your own pieces of paper. So if you would be willing to be a volunteer and work directly with me on this exercise, please just pop yes into the chat box. Just so, so you're not going into it totally blind. The exercise is going to be one around values. And I know that for those of you that are current Park Fellows, you'll have more recently potentially visited what your values are and surface those with some exercises you've done with Laura over this year and last year. And for some of us who are a little bit further out from graduation, it may have been a little while since we've sort of actively revisited this piece around values. So let me just see, is anybody willing to work with me? The benefit of working with me would be you get a little bit of direct one-on-one help from me on the call. And for the rest of you, like I say, you will be doing this for yourself on your own piece of paper while I go through this. So you can either put yes in the chat box or just if you're on video, give me a wave. And I'd be very happy to come to you and take you off of mute. So let me know. Okay, so Taylor has very bravely said, I will be your example. Yeah, that's great, Taylor. It's absolutely super cool. So I'm gonna come and take you off mute. Taylor, thank you for volunteering. There we go. Cool, so for you, Taylor, thank you. Thank you for being a volunteer. And for all of you, what we're gonna do in terms of this exercise around values is I want you to basically think of things that you consider important across your life as a whole. So not just the context of work, but your life as a whole. And basically, I'll just be looking for you to write down, or in your case, Taylor, to say a number of words that describe things that are really important to you. And you'll know this, all of you, through a number of experiences you will have had in your life. So there may be times where you felt in a very peak state and very alive and very congruent, with what was happening. It's likely that one or more of your values was having the opportunity to be expressed at that point in time. Equally, if you felt sometime in the past, you can think back and say, I felt angry or misaligned or frustrated, or it's likely that that's a period of time or a point in time where one or more of your values was not having the opportunity to be expressed. So again, think about this as your life as a whole, not just work. And there's a few words, everybody's list will look different because values are unique to you and totally personal. But just to give you an idea of the kinds of things that could be coming up, everything from accomplishment to spontaneity to fun to friendship to balance. It can be any number of things. So like I said, for all of you, please start writing down your own list while I go ahead and work on this with you, Taylor. And I'm getting just a little bit of background noise, so I'm not sure, Emily, if you could check that everyone else is on mute. That would be super. Thank you. Okay, so Taylor, go for it. Please just start saying some words or short phrases that describe your values.
Sure. I'd say the first one that comes to mind is balance.
Mm-hmm.
A second one is recognition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Feeling financially secure is another important one for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get that. Oops. Yeah. So what else? Balance, recognition, financially secure. This is great.
Yep. Health and well-being, which I guess are maybe separate or together, depending.
Yeah. Well, let's list them as two separate things for now. Yeah. What else, Taylor? This is really good.
Let's see. It's um, it's very subjective, but in my mind, making a positive contribution is important.
Mm. Yeah. And for you, when you say positive contribution, what, yeah, anything else around that? Like in terms of, like you said, it's subjective. What does positive contribution really mean to you?
Yeah, so I think to me, a positive contribution, part of it relates back to what was said a minute ago about, at work, I like to make sure that I feel like I'm making the organization better than it would be if I were not there. But I also think of it of the communities that I'm a part of, that I'm sort of making a positive difference. So organization and communities better off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And let's see, because it hasn't sort of been spelled out yet, but it's sort of a big part of the balance equation is sort of family, friends, and relationships.
Yeah. Great. So for all of you, just keep writing your own lists as I go through this with Taylor. And you might end up with a list of 5, you might have 25, that's all good. Like just keep writing things that come to mind that are important to you across your life. So thank you. And Taylor, what else pops to mind?
I'm trying to think of the way to describe it, but I feel my best when I feel like I naturally fit into either organizations or communities. So I feel happiest at work when I naturally fit there, and not so much when I feel like I have to adapt.
Yeah. And so that's bringing to my mind images of like you fitting with the culture of the organization. Is that?
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. I don't feel like we have to fill every single last one of these out. But anything else for you, Taylor? What else would be added to your list of values?
I guess the only other one that comes to mind off the top of my head is around sort of equity and fairness. Something that's personally fairly pertinent. So
absolutely. Great. Okay, and I think I heard you say that sort of feels like it's rounding out your list for you. So that's great. Thank you, Taylor. And then what I'd like to do together with you, Taylor, and then for all of you, please do this for your own list of values that you will have put together. I'd like to group them into sort of 5 to 7 groupings so that, you get the ones kind of clumped together that look or feel like for you, they sort of hang together. And I heard that coming through a little bit and already what you shared in some of these, Taylor. So for you, Taylor, and again, for all of you, do this for your own values words, like group them up and aim for sort of 5 to 7. So for you, Taylor, when you look at this list of values that you did such a beautiful job of articulating, by the way, thank you. What looks like or feels like it sort of fits together for you or would sit together?
Let's see. I'd probably put financially secure in its own little category.
Yeah.
And then I think the community's better off, positive contribution, and making the organization better, I'd put into a similar category.
Yes.
And then I would probably put health, well-being, balance, and family, friends, and relationships into one category.
Great. Or did you say the family, friends, and relationships all went together with this?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can leave it there if that feels good to you.
Yeah.
Okay, and so for all of you, and again, I'll do this with you, Taylor, live here. What I'd like you to do now is just find one word or short phrase that describes each of these values sort of groupings. So I'm assuming recognition we could just leave on its own. So for this grouping around balance, health, family, friends, relationships, and well-being, is there a word in there or another different word that you would use to best describe that grouping for you?
Probably balance.
Okay, great. Okay, and what about the positive contribution, communities better off making organization better? Which either existing word or words or a new word describes that grouping for you?
Contribution.
Great, okay, thank you. All righty, and I think, would you change anything else around the wording of financially secure, equity and fairness, and naturally fit to make it feel like it best describes that for you, or would you leave it as they are?
You could just narrow it to equity, probably.
Okay. Okay. Great. Yeah. All right, and I might for this one naturally fit because that was around culture. Would you say culture? Would you say something different? Like when you described that, culture was the word that popped to mind for me, but maybe it's something else for you.
No, I think culture is a good, yeah, that's what I was thinking of as well.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, super duper. Thank you for that, Taylor. And hang with me because we're going to do a next sort of bit to this exercise. So for all of you, I'd ask you to please get out a new fresh sheet of paper. And what I'd like to have you do is draw on it a grid that looks like this. So down one side, on the left-hand side, you'll write the word work, because in this case, we are going to look in the context of either your current work, or for those of you who are soon to be graduating, the work that you'll be going into as you can see it as far as you can now. And then I'd like you to write 2 columns next to this work column. So the first column says these values are expressed. And then the second column says these values are not expressed. So 2 columns, these values are expressed, and then the right-hand column, these values are not expressed. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take those headings that you've just defined for the different values that you identified. And what we're going to do is for each of you, again, for your own, on your own pieces of paper, do this for yourself, and I'll go through and do this with you, Taylor. And what we're going to do is basically place these on this grid, and you could put the values in any number of places. It could be that the value that you've sort of identified there is clearly expressed in the context of your work and how that allows it to show up, you know, in your work and your life, or it may be that the value is not expressed or somewhere in the middle. So you can, you know, it doesn't have to be all of one or all of the other. But so for you, Taylor, tell me a little bit about your situation. Are you still looking for a role, or are you, have you accepted something? Where are you with that?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate to have enjoyed my summer experience and have received an offer. So I will be going back to Liberty Mutual after graduating.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. So you know where you're headed off to, and you have an experience from this summer there.
I do.
So great. I just realized I've missed one, so I'm going to go back and grab that. There we go. Okay, so for you, Taylor, when you think about balance, and in the context of your work at Liberty Mutual, would you say that this value is expressed, is not expressed, or somewhere in the middle?
I think is expressed.
Okay, great. And what about contribution?
I would put contribution more towards the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go, to the middle. And then what about equity?
Let's leave that one for last. I need to ponder that one more.
Okay, no worries. And what about financially secure?
Is expressed.
Okay, great. And what about recognition?
I think is also expressed.
Yeah, okay, great. And what about culture?
Is expressed.
Okay, super. And equity, fairness, you called that as well.
Yeah, let's put that one in the middle towards expressed.
Okay, great. Sort of about there, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so for all of you, when you look at your charts here, the grid that you've basically mapped your values on top of, I guess I'll ask you, Taylor, and for all of you, look at this for yourself. What strikes you as you look at this table now?
I think, well, for me, if thinking back to the first question of how fulfilled I feel overall, I probably would put myself at about a 7, because I really did enjoy my experience this summer, and think that it does fit me really well in lots of ways, at least for now. Hopefully that remains the case. So I think seeing this kind of reinforces that, in all the ways that I remember liking it and why.
Yeah, fantastic. And what are some of the what are some of the specifics for you? Like, even stepping back from this a little bit, like, what would you say, as you look at this list of values, is the most important to you? If you almost were sort of starting to put weightings on these values and say, are they all, well, and there may not be weightings. Maybe you say, look, they all are pretty much, equally important to me, or there's some that are clearly more important. What comes up for you if you think about, are there some that are sort of bigger in importance than others to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that these values have been somewhat consistent for me for a while. And I usually am one of the people where if you ask me to make a list, I'll come up with a rather long one and then have a hard time narrowing it down. So I think I know, having tried to sort of rank order variations of these before, I know that recognition comes up pretty strongly, but when I'm thinking about it and ranking it, balance also comes up pretty strongly, and contribution.
Great. Okay, so for all of you, this is another dimension you can take and do for yourself, maybe after this workshop, if you want to have a further in-depth think about your values, like put weightings on them and see which ones come up as even more important. So for all of you, and thank you again, Taylor, for being a volunteer. Like, the aim of this exercise is to basically do two things. One, it's to get you clear and clarity as to why you are potentially feeling quite fulfilled and what's working for you, or if you have some more of your values in the not expressed category, get you some clarity as to what might be happening and why you're not as fulfilled as you could be. And what's really important is if you can be super clear on your values and what's most important to you as you navigate across your career, that can really help to avoid some of the traps that can happen, where, for example, maybe you've been really, having most of your values expressed and feeling really fulfilled. And then it could be, there's an opportunity to take a great sounding role on paper, but actually that role ends up throwing some of your values into the not expressed column, and you end up being unfulfilled and unhappy. So it's just so important to always be in touch with, what are your values and are they having the chance to be expressed at any point in time, because that can be a real clear pointer as to why you are happy and fulfilled or not. Just curious, one person, I'd love to hear from one person or pair, as I see a couple of you are there together. Just one thing that struck you from that exercise, and then speaking about it afterwards.
Angie, if I can go, this is Tori.
Yeah, hi Tori, thanks.
Yeah, and I was going to say one of the things from our group, which was Donnie, Hannah, Zweifler, and myself, was that what fulfillment looks like at work changes over time. And I guess we talked about things, and sort of in some of my own reflection, things that were really important to me in jobs that I've had previously have shifted now. And we were just talking about, if in some cases, whether or not we found things that we were looking for in previous jobs, then part of it was that we might not even have known we needed that or been looking at other points in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tori, for sharing that. And I couldn't agree more. I feel I had in my head, I don't know, maybe if I were to jump back 20 years ago, that I had heard somewhere that, your values are your values and they stay pretty steady over time. And in fact, what's important to your fulfillment relative to those, the various criteria that will be coming together for fulfilling work for each of you, that does shift over time and it does change. I can think of my attitude towards, work and balance once I had children, completely changed versus before having kids. And so they absolutely do change. So thank you for sharing that, Tori, and bringing that up, that yes, you will shift and change over time. So it's great to revisit these kind of exercises to constantly be in touch with where are you now in your life. Great, thank you. So hopefully everybody was able to connect on your calls. If you had any sort of tech issues or whatever, just let us know that in the chat box, and I'll try to sort of do the breakout rooms maybe differently next time. I'm not quite sure how they work with the people calling in from cell phones, so just let me know if you were able to actually speak to each other or not. That'd be great. And what I wanted to do at this section is to just share just a tiny little bit of theory of one way, that you could to look at your career and your work in the context of fulfillment. And it's what I like to call the fulfillment sweet spot. So if you want to take a few notes, this is a good time. And again, use the chat box if any questions come up for you as I share this. But in terms of your fulfilling work will come at the intersection of three things. So some people like to know, or some people will say, follow your passion and the money will just come. And I don't believe it's that simple. You basically need to look at three different components. And for fulfilling work for you to happen, you need to first and foremost know what gives me energy. What is it that gives me energy, not just in terms of what I am doing, but also who am I doing it with? That what Taylor was saying, that cultural fit as well. Where am I doing it and how do I fit? Can I show up as myself or do I have to pretend to be somebody else? Pretending to be somebody else is pretty energy draining. So what gives you energy is typically a place where you can, show up as your authentic self. So there's all kinds of components that factor into what gives you energy. And just for context, for many of the people I'm working with that want to change their career, this is often the piece that might be missing for them. The next piece of the puzzle is, what am I good at? So what are the skills and experiences that you've developed over time? And super importantly, what are your natural talents? I mean, what are the things that you do that are so easy and natural for you? You almost feel like, I can't believe somebody pays me to do this. It's really about tapping into, what are you naturally good at, as well as what have you developed skill-wise over time. And the final piece is, what will the world pay you for, right? That all important piece of actually getting paid. Often people will say, well, I have this thing I love to do and I'm good at it, but if it's not something the world will pay for, you probably got a really great hobby that hopefully, you can design your life around having that be part of your life. But, you've got to have, in terms of a career fulfillment, all three of these present. You really can't leave one out. And like I say, for most of the people that I end up working with who want to change their career, or at least that's what they come with initially, they're typically really good at what they do and they're very well paid. And boy, on Sunday evenings, they have a little bit of a pit in their stomach because they're just not energized by what they do. Now, sometimes I have worked with people who are, they love what they do and they're really good at, and maybe there's a piece around they need to be, really asking pay-wise, to feel that it's fair and equitable and what they should be making. So again, that's just a tiny little bit of theory. And what these three areas do is they give you three metrics that you can then measure where you're at. So the first metric is what I call resonance. So what about that energy piece? How does it make me feel? And what is my resonance with what I'm doing? The second metric is competence. Am I good at this, or could I become good at it? And finally, the sustainability is that, again, all important piece of what the world will pay you for. And this might look familiar to some of you. It's taken from a book called Good to Great, and it's called The Hedgehog Concept. And it's written in the context of companies, but I believe it's equally important and relevant to you and your career as well. So let me know if any questions on that. Again, just wanted to share a little bit of, it's just a model. It's one way you could break things down and really sort of, differentiate and think about, okay, where might I be missing some fulfillment if you feel that you are? Or indeed, what do I want to capture in terms of what I know does fulfill me, and make sure I keep those criteria really clear as I navigate my career going forward. So with that, I'd actually like to invite you to just take a 1-minute break, because we've probably been sitting for a minute. This next exercise, we're going to be doing some writing. So literally take 1 minute. I'd invite you to get up, stretch your legs, move around a little bit, and then come back with your pen and paper ready. So just take 1 quick minute and take a quick break. Okay, so please rejoin and have your pen and paper ready. The chat box to see if anybody's got a question. Okay. All right, guys. So what we're going to do is step into an exercise that's called 2 years off. So please do have a fresh, clean sheet of paper ready and your pen. And I'm not going to need a volunteer right now, but I may be coming to 1 or 2 of you and speaking to you about what's come up for you during this exercise afterwards. So this exercise is called 2 years off. And you have actually been selected for a government program that has asked you to write at this point in time, what are you going to do in your second year off? Now, the government program is basically 2 whole years off of whatever it is you're doing now, whatever work you may be doing, wherever you may be. And the government has said, look, I'm going to give you 2 entire years to do with whatever you want. Now, why do they want you to write about what you're going to do in the second year? Well, that's because in the first year, the program actually mandates that you need to go and travel to all the places on your bucket list that you haven't seen, and go see maybe friends and relatives in far-reaching places that you haven't caught up with in a while. So that by the beginning of the second year, you reach a point that you are at a year that is wholly and completely and utterly for you. So right now, the government is asking you to write, what are you going to do in that second year? And this is absolutely a year completely for you. You can live anywhere you want to. You can take your family with you and invite your friends to come along too. You can do whatever you want. Have you always wanted to maybe invent something? Now's your chance. Have you always wanted to start your own business? Now's your chance. Would you love to go and see inside 50 different organizations and get a little bite of working in each of those? Now's your chance. Have you always wanted to do something that's more community service oriented, in perhaps a big way? Now's your chance. Is there a hobby you've always wanted to pursue, or something you've always wanted to learn? Now's your chance. This is truly a year for you. You could choose to sit on the sofa for 8 hours a day every day and watch films. If that's what you want to do, it's absolutely fine. There is literally no requirements, just that this year is totally and utterly for you. So I'd like you to start writing now, and I'll leave a few prompts on the screen, but start writing. And my strong recommendation to you is just keep your pen moving on the paper. Even if you're not 100% sure, just move your pen and see what comes out the other side. It's a free writing exercise, so no editing, no worry, nothing's right or wrong. Just keep writing and writing and writing. We'll have about 5 minutes to do this just now. So please start writing now. And what would you do in this second year off? And if the music, when it comes on, is too loud, please just feel free to turn down your volume a bit. So just start writing and keep writing and writing and writing. got a couple of minutes left, so just keep writing and writing. What would you just love to do? You have no limitations. The world is your oyster. It can be anything you want. Keep writing and writing. Got about a minute left, so just keep writing. About 20 seconds left, so just keep writing and then gently come to the end of the sentence you're currently working on, and then you can put your pen or pencil down whenever you're finished, just what you're writing now. Okay, so this is a short period of time in which to do this, and certainly it's something you can revisit after the workshop if you'd like to. But what I'd like to do is see, even though it's a scenario that probably not many of us will find ourselves in, this exercise is designed to do something very, very deliberate, which you may have gotten a sense for already. But I would love to just explore briefly what emerges in what some of you have experienced by doing this. So who would like to share something? Hi,
yeah,
Kenny, thank you. So what did you write down specifically that you thought, oh, that's interesting?
Yeah, so this was after like the 15th time you said keep writing, so it's like way down on the list, but it's a good one. I wrote, tell the people I care about them, or tell the people I care about that I care about them, and forgive the people who have wronged me. So like get over the past fears of, you know, not wanting to be transparent or not wanting to be honest with people, and find a way to get to that point where you can, you know, communicate the things that you care about to the people that you care about, right? So this is way after all like the career aspirations and learning things, like just baseline emotional vulnerability.
Yeah. So I thank you for sharing that. And I could actually hear some emotion in your voice as you shared that. So I really appreciate you, diving in there and going for what came out when you went really deep. I'd be really curious as well, would you be willing to share just maybe 2 or 3 of the things specifically that you wrote down in addition to that, that you thought were interesting as well? Yeah,
sure. So I think for me, just trying to get some level of clarity, you know, part of the reason I like the PARC program so much and it's meant so much to me is helping to understand myself, what's important to me and what's not, which I like explicitly made notes about. So spend some time understanding how I want to help people in my career, how I want to spend money for like charitable advances, find a way to, I wrote a note, figure out who the heck's going to pay me to keep doing stuff like all this. So just a lot of effort on clarity and understanding where I want my life to go, which you'd think by now we'd all have a better idea of that, but clearly for myself, I don't.
Yeah, well, it's an ongoing journey for sure. So and all of you notice if you're willing, Kenny, I'd love to just ask you a couple more questions around both of these things. So and just notice what I'm doing here, because all of you can do this for yourselves for each of the individual things that you wrote down as part of the next part of the exercise, and even after the workshop as well. So Kenny, what is it? Let's just start with the first thing you shared. You know, tell the people I care about what they mean to me, and also forgive people, or tell them I didn't know. write down exactly what you said, but it was around, sort of getting to peace with who wronged me. So
Right.
what is it about that that's important to you?
I think for me in the past, I can tell that when you tell somebody that you appreciate what they've done for you, even if it's something really, really small, that can mean a lot to folks. And similarly, when in the past, when I have done something to wrong somebody, and you've made an apology, there's still kind of that lingering thought in your mind of like, I hope this person is okay. And they know like I think about it, right? So I think some of it is kind of a selfish motivation of I know how much that stuff can mean to me when I hear it, and I would hope that it can mean something to somebody else. But those are really, really difficult things to do, and they take a lot of presence and acceptance to reflect upon, and then come to terms with it and actually make an action to move forward with it. So some of it might just be wishful thinking that it matters to other people as much as it matters to me. But I think even the exercise of going through it and really, recognizing what has been both good and bad can be very important in moving forward and making something actionable for the future.
Well, absolutely. And I feel like I just want to stop sharing the screen here so we can see more people better, and use the chat box for this as well. Like, Kenny, I love that you brought this up, because I can't imagine that there's that many people who would say appreciation is really not that important to them. So
Right.
who on this call, like when they hear Kenny say like, I like to be appreciated, and even if it's something small, if somebody acknowledges and says thank you, that feels great, right? So what a great reminder. And what I'm hearing for you, Kenny, is that something that you want to have as part of the way you operate in life is that you make the space and time, and you're conscious of appreciating others. And when necessary, also making those apologies if somehow, something you did, you felt like you wish you would have done differently.
Yep.
So I think
and forgiving other people for if they've done something wrong to me, right? So, yep.
Yeah. So appreciation, forgiveness, and apology. And then what about this time? You said you wanted to spend time getting clear on how you want to lead others, and also around charitable advancement. So tell me, let's maybe just pick the charitable advancement one, just to be super clear. Like, what is it about that that's important to you?
Yeah, so that one's a little bit tactical. It fits in with my wanting to affect other people and having some kind of real impact on people. And obviously, as I go forward in my career, as many people do, I've found that having money can sometimes, or donating money can be an easy way to try to affect the world and make donations, because that's important. But I think with so many different causes and so many different organizations to ostensibly help those causes, it's something I think about a lot, is like, am I giving the money that I can give in the most effective way? So in a lot of ways, that's trying to help people, but it's also kind of, if I had the time, I'd like to just resolve that and put in the work to understand and prioritize how I want to try to financially impact the world.
Yeah. And so what is it about that for you, Kenny, that's important to you around getting that real high level of clarity about what difference you're making with your financial contributions? Why is that important?
I think obviously the first part is just general generosity, but there's also a part of me that really likes knowing that I get things right. Like being an engineer for a lot of my career, like there's just an intrinsic desire to know, like, yes, like I did this and it's right and it's the right way, and I can continuously improve to do things better. That makes me really happy. It gives me kind of the same type of reward as any kind of baseline aptitude or ability to perform, is just knowing that you did a good job, even at something like donating money.
Yeah. So did you all notice, like, there's some clues in what Kenny said that are what criteria will be that are present in your life for what's important to you to be fulfilling, right? So it's not just about, donating some money for you. There's a piece around, you always want to have this generosity piece, and it's around doing that well, knowing that even the financial donations that you make is something that you have done the rigor behind to do that well.
Right.
So thank you, Kenny, for sharing that. I just really appreciate your bravery and stepping forward. And so for all of you, just notice what I did there together with Kenny, because again, you can do this for yourselves. And that is go through, not right this second, but afterwards, for each thing that you wrote down, and ask yourself, okay, what is it about that that's important to me? And then for whatever your answer is, ask again, well, why is that important to me? And then for whatever you say, keep asking, well, why is that important to me? And you're really just unpeeling these layers of the motivations behind why you wrote down what you wrote down, right? So if you may have written down, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but maybe I want to move to an island and start up a small business that sells coconuts on the seashore, one way you could look at this exercise and say, well, clearly that's what I meant to be doing, but actually it's the underlying motivations behind why you wrote that down. Maybe it's something around having the space and the solitude to think, and having, control over the majority of a business. I don't know, but it's when you dig under and ask yourself, why is that important to me? And why did I write that down? And then why is that important to me for each answer that you give? That can be really telling. Again, those motivations behind why you wrote down what you wrote down in this exercise will surface some more, values and criteria that will be present in your fulfilling career in life. Yeah. So what I'd like to do here is go again and use some breakout rooms for just 5 minutes. And I'd like you to you can choose. So either pick one thing that you wrote down and have the other person ask you, well, why is that important? And then whatever you say, keep asking why, until you feel like you've really gotten to the core of what the motivation is. Or if you just feel like you've learned something from this already and just want to share, a general learning, that's fine too. All right, everybody, so welcome back. And by way of sort of wrapping up this part of the workshop, I would love to invite each of you, challenge each of you to come up with an action, something that's, based on what you learned today, whether it's something that surfaced for you in one of the exercises, something that you got a little bit of clarity on. What is an action that you'd like to set for yourself that you could, put in place, even if it's something small, that would move you toward even greater levels of fulfillment in your work within the context of your whole life? So have a moment, have a think, and I would love to just come to as many of you as I can to hear some initial thoughts. But my hope and aim for this workshop is to not only increase your awareness of fulfillment and the importance of that, in terms of how it affects you and your life, and then impacts those around you, and then impacts ultimately the world at large. It's my firm belief that the more people who are more fulfilled in their work in the context of their whole life, the world is definitely a better place. It just has so many positive effects on you, your friends, your family, and again, that in turn just makes the world a better place. So I'm just really curious, what would be one action you'd like to set for yourself that would be something you'd sort of maybe test out to see if you can even move the needle further on more fulfillment for you? So I'm going to come and unmute. It's the name on there is Ryan. I know you're two people that I can't remember from the beginning. It's Ryan and
it's Ann.
And hi, Ryan and Ann. So in terms of one action you might set for yourself off the back of what we've explored today, what would that be?
We had to distill two somewhat similar priorities. I would say it's proactively shifting balance. So we're already in Maine, so we already have made that proactive choice to just, evade an 80-hour work week. But nonetheless, I think, Ann was focusing more on spending very thoughtful time with the children. And my initiative centered around reaching out to what has been otherwise a splintered friendship base that has just slowly moved further and further apart. So if anything, it was reconnecting and was focusing more on the kids, beyond friendships. So that would be, I think our best conduit would be to really find ways in our day to just carve out an extra half an hour even, and just repurpose them for things that we want to do, kids and friends.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Ann and Ryan. And I love the words that you used. Did you all notice how Ryan just said, carve out an extra half hour or an hour in a day? That is so key. When you want to make a shift or a change, it requires effort. If you've read any of Gretchen Rubin's work, she'll say that habits are the architecture of your life. So you're talking about creating new habits, and that does require, actual space and time to make it happen. So I just love the way you put those words around that. So, okay, thank you very much for sharing. I'm probably not going to have the time to come to everybody. So if you have something you'd really like to share, put your hand up. Otherwise, I'm going to just come around sort of to each one of you. Yes, Kristen, thank you for volunteering.
So I have a lot of different plans I'm excited about, but one is I'm very inspired to teach others how to prioritize sleep. I think in my entire life, and especially now, I travel a lot internationally for work, and I think about my past and think about time at Johnson, think about other grad school, think about all different kinds of times of my life I've been sleep deprived. And as I've been prioritizing it recently, I've just noticed an amazing change in productivity, in wellness, in mood. I think that's just, it's endless. And I've been just reading a ton about it recently. So right now I'm developing a class to teach other Google employees where I work as just an optional, session. And that would be really exciting to share it with, Johnson students, Park alums. I think it could be really, really exciting. I feel really strongly about it and think it's a really crazy thing in our society that we're all sleeping like 2 hours less than our grandparents. So it's something that I think could really impact everyone in a really positive way. Easier said than done when everyone has so many commitments and children and all these things. But we also have like gadgets that keep us up at night and video games, and movies. And it's a really interesting thing to think about, like, how do you avoid all those temptations?
Totally. Kristen, thank you for sharing. That sounds so inspiring what you're developing. And I love all the personal research you've dived into around sleep. I couldn't agree with you more. Sleep is one of those foundational elements, along with, what do you eat and how much do you move, that it's just critical to take care of yourself and be able to then be functioning more highly, when you are awake. So love that. And I heard that, Laura, were you making a note? Because I think I heard maybe a potential next workshop to make a bold request there. That's awesome, Kristen. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. And Kenny says I would attend, and other people are awesome. Signing up already. That's
all
great.
Right.
So I would just like to say thank you to Kenny for popping in here, that your action is to set work objectives that better align with my fulfillment and professional goals as opposed to only corporate goals. Love that. Thank you for sharing that in the chat box. Fantastic. Let me come just to, I think, one more person, and then I'll turn it back over to Laura for closing. So what about you, Donnie? Donnie, what's one action step you'd like to set for yourself coming out of the workshop today?
A big one for me, I would say, is just being present. We're oversubscribed while we're in the Johnson bubble. I think that's easy to still maintain that, I imagine, from this past summer. Interning in the consulting world is just being really busy and losing track of today versus all the stuff you have to do tomorrow and the next day and the next week. But just taking a moment, breathe, don't look at the phone, just being present when you're with those that you love. And if you're even an hour a day taking the dogs out.
Yeah, I love that, Donnie. Thank you for mentioning. And just to sort of dig under that a little bit. So what is one thing in terms of a strategy or a tactic or just something, something that will enable you and support you in being present in those moments where you're aiming to be more present?
Thinking about just, Kristen had mentioned the phone, just even putting that away during like dinner. Just leave it in a completely different room. Same goes for going to bed.
Yeah, fantastic. Super, Donnie. Thank you for sharing. I think it's a great reminder for all of us, like being present is so not only good for you, but good for those around you. So thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And if anybody else, thank you, would like to share what your action is in the chat box, please do. And I'm going to, at this point, in just a second, turn it back over to Laura for closing. But I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for all of you for taking the time to invest in yourself and to be here and to invest in our wonderful Park Fellow community. It's, again, an honor and a privilege to be here and have the chance to take you through these couple of exercises that I hope have been useful to you. And just thanks for being here and for taking the time. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Ange. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I know that as I mentioned at the beginning, as I've talked to various alumni in my travels and trying to connect with people, I've had so many folks say, one of the things that was most valuable for me during the park program was sort of the forced structure to just stop for a minute and pause and reflect and think about, where am I? What am I doing? And is this the impact I want to be having? Is this the life I want to be leading? And that, when we head out and we end up, in just what is the day to day, it's really easy to not stop and take that breath. And so I'm hoping that we can do more sessions like this, where there's just different elements around things that help us to be more effective in our lives and more effective as leaders, and connect with each other, because this is a really amazing group of alumni. And so I look forward to another session. It sounds like we've got Kristen hopefully lined up. I know that for those of you that might know Jamie Hunt, he and I've been talking about him possibly doing something in the spring around flow. And so those are a couple of things, as well as another one of our fellows has been talking about something potentially around resilience, and how do we build resilience. And so I'll keep you posted, but those are some of the different topics I've had alumni say that they're interested in sharing with the group. I'd encourage you, if any of you, sort of like Kristen, have something that you are going deep in that you have found really useful that you'd be willing to share with the rest of this group, I'd love to have you lead a session. Or if you know of one of your peers in this park community that you think has something really great to share. I'm desperately quickly trying to meet as many of our alumni as possible, but I know that there's still a huge swath of folks I haven't had a chance to connect with yet. So if there's a talent out there that we would, you'd love to have lead something like this, please send them my way, or let me know and I'll reach out to them so that we can continue these conversations. So I hope everyone has a great Sunday evening. If you have anything about this that you'd like to follow up with me on, please let me know. And we look forward to seeing you again at another session, or possibly something in person with some of you sometime soon. So take care and have a great night.